Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
This is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service.
That classic pro wrestling event could be a pay-per-view, a television special, a major arena show from the territory days. It could be a big show from New Japan Pro Wrestling in the past. Or in the case of this week's episode of the podcast, it is a pre-Coliseum home video, WWF home video tape release.
Yeah, so just to catch up any of our new listeners, the randomizer is the machine that we fire up and we say, hey, here's a bunch of streaming service, give me a show to watch. And the randomizer will spit out any one of those shows that you just described, any type like that. And
basically anything that isn't weekly television.
It's not weekly television.
It's fair game.
And it's gone off the board a few times and picked some really wacky home video releases. This is definitely one of them. We don't know what the randomizer is going to pick. We get it, we watch it, we review it, and I want to make sure that all of our listeners know that, you know, the best way to interact with the show is via our Twitter at WrestleAtRandom, the same for Instagram at WrestleAtRandom, WrestlingAtRandom.com, of course, the website that has the entire back catalog of this podcast.
And subscribe there, by the way. Subscribe is the way to do it. You can do it either there, you can do it, via Spotify, so many different ways, via Apple Podcasts, a plethora of opportunities for you to listen and subscribe to this podcast.
Yeah, your podcatcher of choice. We've got a link to it at WrestlingAtRandom.com. And so, yeah, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. You never miss an episode. Every single Thursday, we let you know what's coming this Sunday, and then every Sunday we drop a new episode of this podcast, and we have a large back catalog at this point of shows.
30 shows now, not including tonight's.
Unbelievable. So go back and enjoy those. That's the beauty of this content. It's evergreen content. It's there waiting patiently for you when you're ready to listen to it. So go ahead, listen to it, and interact with the show. Leave us a comment and send us a message on Twitter. Even if you're listening to a show that was 15 episodes ago, we still want to hear from you. And we want to hear from you if you rented this tape when it came out and it was at your local video store. WWF's most unusual matches from
It also might be the WWE Network's most unusual video file on their app.
Yeah, this one's from May 16th.
The most rare, or the most hidden gem. This thing is, you're gonna explain it. This is, you use the phrase "off the board." That definitely describes this. If there's ever been a show in the dozens of episodes we've done that proves that the randomizer is random, for any doubters, any skeptics out there, this would be the episode.
Yeah, May 16th, 1985 is the date of this tape. It was a VHS tape that was released, like you said, WWF Home Video Coliseum Home Video Presents. Now, this match, it's basically the most unusual matches for 1985 standards. So this show's going to feature a lot of matches with stipulations, including a very famous steel cage match, which I will go into greater detail about the impact, the influence, what this match meant to the larger wrestling landscape. I'll get into that later. But first, it got me thinking, the Georgia Championship Wrestling Battle of Atlanta show, that was 1983, so that was probably one of the oldest cage matches we reviewed. I was thinking, how far back, when did cage matches start? And digging through the Magic Internet Machine, it told me that the earliest record of a cage match goes back to newspaper records that were found for two January 9th, 1936 matches.
Well, that's old, but according to the beginning of this tape, which we'll get to later, I assumed it was 5,000 years ago.
Oh, we'll get there. The participants in the 1936 cage match was Lon Chaney versus Otto Ludwig, and the other was Joe Dillman versus Charles Sinke. And these weren't actually steel cage matches. The first cage match in wrestling, these were chicken wire fence matches in the far southeast region of Missouri. Now, putting chicken wire around the ring to keep people out, keep people in, this concept drew a capacity crowd. The news stories on that show said that the promoter had come up with the idea, so Mike Maroney is the promoter. I think we can credit him with the idea. So as best we can tell, that was the first cage match. And I mentioned renting this videotape, and I remember going to my local video store, looking at the couple rows of wrestling VHS tapes at the local video store, and always looking for new ones to rent. Seeing this cover on the internet of this video, it looked familiar, but I have no idea if I rented it as a small child. Knowing how starved I was for content, I'm sure I probably did, but I had no memory of this show whatsoever, this tape, going into this show.
So you mean there's a cover that's more elaborate than the blue screen with a stencil font that says WWF's most unusual matches when the videotape starts, when the show starts?
Yeah, well, they got the fancy graphics out of the way early because the tape opens with outer space graphics and white text that starts scrolling up the screen. The white text scrolling up the screen. Take us through what this said.
Yeah, I have to jump in here because the second this started, I made sure to pause every 10 seconds or so I could write this down verbatim. As you mentioned, there's a starscape background, white text on the screen. You'd be forgiven if you're thinking you accidentally fired up Star Wars instead, but that is not the case.
No, Star Wars letters go like into the space. This one just scrolls up the screen like it's a teleprompter.
Yeah. Yes, definitely not a sci-fi original super influential thing here. This is lower budget for sure. And it begins by saying it began over 5,000 years ago when civilization was young. Every major culture, Egypt, Greece, Rome, India, Japan, studied it, practiced it, perfected it to a fine art. They admired its Olympian demands: strength, speed, agility, skill, grace, and courage. They did it to honor their gods. They did it to honor their kings. They did it to train their soldiers. They did it to compete. And they did it for fun. It has come down through the ages to us today. It is...
Wait. Before you say anything else, I want to make mention that every single sentence you just said had ... on the screen. So
yes,
they did it to honor their kings.
Drinking game when you watch, yeah, if you have an ellipsis drinking game when you watch videos, you will be drunk before the show starts.
They did it to compete ... Then they did it for fun ... It was like somebody was getting paid by the ... dots here.
Yes,
and then you said
absolutely.
The next line is capital is ...
Yes, and then at that point, you're expecting them to say wrestling or have the word wrestling pop up on the screen. Instead, we get, it felt like an hour, but I think it was maybe 30 seconds of slow motion clips of WWF matches. But they never actually it never actually says wrestling. It never actually says what it is.
No.
Which I thought was also kind of fitting that so many years later, that would be pretty much a banned word in this company. But yes, at that point, then we get the aforementioned blue screen where it says in very basic font, WWF's most unusual matches. And from there, we go to what looks to be the WWF Control Center with a bunch of, videotape machines in the background. And Jesse Ventura introduces us to this videotape. He is wearing, it's always worth a spin down fashion corner when you're talking about Jesse Ventura.
Get comfortable, folks, because there's a lot to unpack here. This is going to be quite the challenge to explain on this week's Fashion Corner.
He is wearing a blue feather hat, these red sunglasses that I don't know if they're supposed to be like feathers that somehow match the like peacock nature of the blue hat. He has blonde hair, blonde sideburns, like a brown goatee Fu Manchu type of thing, and then a yellow leather jacket.
Okay, so you haven't done this justice. So he's wearing, first of all, blue jeans with like a gym T-shirt or tank top. Okay, and then the jacket you described. This is a mustard color pleather jacket here. This is not like a suit coat. This is like a pleather jacket. It's shiny.
That's why it's not a yellow leather jacket.
It's not. I don't think it's leather. I don't think.
It's wrestling. Everything's a work. I'm gonna give Jesse the benefit of the doubt. He convinced me. If he could go on the hosting a videotape wearing this, that confidence convinced me that this is like legit $1,000 leather jacket that just happens to be yellow for some reason.
These giant earrings in both ears that hang down to his shoulders that have like feathers and beads and such, and those glasses, they were red frame black lens sunglasses, and they had like pointed ends like fireworks or fingers coming off the edges of the frames.
Definitely an Elton John style sunglasses choice, I would say for sure.
This hat,
the hat is
it's almost like a wig. It's like if you said, hey, here's a bluish purplish old lady short hair curly haired wig, and you put it on, it could be mistaken for that. It looked completely ridiculous with his blonde hair hanging out the bottom of this hat. Completely absurd.
For fans of modern wrestling, his hat looked basically like Dalton Castle's entire visual presentation is sold into headwear.
So this is so he's
the yellow
here.
Sideburns. You can never talk too much about either. Those are like in blonde again, blonde, but more yellow. Like he apparently dyed his sideburns to match his leather jacket.
So he's sitting on the desk here, and he's just calmly and professionally introducing this show.
Very calmly, and there's
completely
no
absurd
music
while he does it. He's just completely calm and professional about this whole thing.
There's no music in the background. He's not the bombastic Jesse Ventura that you've been become accustomed to. Like he's speaking in like a very affected way, but it's not loud. It's definitely a bit disconcerting. It's kind of weird. This whole tape has just got like a weird feel to it.
Yeah, he tells us that he's our host because the most unusual host and announcer should host the most unusual matches tape. And what's an unusual match, you ask? Jesse explains the two criteria here. Number one was to give the fans the extra measure of excitement with a greater possible combination for action.
Yes. Or it happens when the feeling between wrestlers is so bitter that special matches have to be arranged. At this point, I noted that with no background music and with the way this is all being explained, this felt like something that I would have seen in like fourth grade history or social studies class. If we had like a substitute teacher and they put in like a very dry video explaining what professional wrestling was. That's what this felt like.
Jesse warns everyone that you will have names come up more than once on this videotape, like Greg the Hammer Valentine. Come on, randomizer. At least Jesse was warning me ahead of time, like he's listening to this show, that I had to be aware that Greg the Hammer Valentine was going to be on more times than once on this show. This is a family-friendly podcast, so I can't tell you what I yelled at the screen, but at this point, I literally paused the show to make a Bloody Mary. It was 10 a.m., otherwise I would have hit the bourbon. But I texted you a picture of my Bloody Mary and said, all right, now I can get back into the show.
I'll have to post that picture once the show goes up so people can see what you were dealing with in real time. I'll just say I'm not surprised that Jesse did you a solid there and told you ahead of time, because for long-time listeners of this show, pretty much anytime Jesse Ventura has been an announcer on any of the shows that we've watched and reviewed, he kind of is like our voice as we're watching. So not surprised here. So then from there, he talks about introduces us to the first match, which is Tito Santana versus the Intercontinental Champion Greg the Hammer Valentine in a lumberjack match. We get an explanation from Jesse as to why this match is happening. He tells us that Greg the Hammer Valentine sent Tito Santana to the hospital via a figure 4 a while back. And then Tito was complaining that the Hammer would not give him a title shot. And when he did wrestle him, he wouldn't stay in the ring. So they gave him a lumberjack match. Then we get, again, that grade school explanation from Jesse, which I'm not knocking. It was amusing, but it's very effective, explaining what's a lumberjack. And he tells us, quote, "The name derives from the Northwest Canadian woods and the super tough world of the lumber camps. When lumbermen had a dispute to settle, they often did it with their fists." All I thought about here was that, was it the World Class show?
Yes.
Where we sat around the campfire. Who was that? God, that's going to drive me crazy. I can't remember who that was that sat us down around the campfire to tell us.
Johnny somebody?
We'll figure it out. Well, somebody will.
Somebody's yelling at their phone right now, just screaming at us like, "Oh, come on!" Much like when I saw Greg the Hammer Valentine on my screen. The human intermission, like you mentioned, is the Intercontinental Champion, and we are in Madison Square Garden for this match. So that means we hear the golden voice of Howard Finkel as the ring announcer. He explains the same rules that Jesse did, without the whole lumberjack backstory. Our announce team for this match, Mean Gene Okerlund with Guerrilla Monsoon.
Yeah, Mean Gene Okerlund on play-by-play, which is interesting. Guerrilla Monsoon, color commentary. Although they really kind of are both just doing color commentary, I don't feel like there's really any play-by-play happening. Also noteworthy that not only is it Howard Finkel doing ring announcing, but it's the awesome old school setup for Madison Square Garden where the rig that holds the microphones is lowered from the ceiling, from like the lighting rig, and it just lowers in front of Howard Finkel, and then he talks into the microphone, and then when he's done, they lift it back up. Such a cool, unique, identifiable thing for that time period.
Our lumberjacks are Big John Studd, Barry O, Matt Bourne, Ricky Steamboat, Jimmy Snuka, and King Kong Bundy, who's wearing a collared shirt with a sweater over it, like he just got here from the country club. And Don Muraco, the Junkyard Dog, Terry Gibbs, Rocky Johnson, and some dude named Charlie Fulton. I have no idea who that is.
One of the other things, just because you mentioned all these names of guys who are around the ring for the lumberjack match, and there's the other matches on this card as well, is how many guys that are on this show were guys that were just coming out of a different territory. Or had been just starting, WWF was just starting to gobble up a lot of guys from different companies. So it's interesting to see, like you said, Greg Valentine being one example of a guy here. And some guys bounce back and forth, but still there's a lot of guys on this WWF show that we've seen on AWA shows, Georgia Championship Wrestling shows, NWA Mid-Atlantic shows that we've reviewed for this podcast.
So I got really angry at the start of this because the camera was pulled back and it looked like Santana and Hammer both had blue trunks on, and I was about to yell, "How does this happen?" But as we got a closer shot, I could see the Hammer has purple trunks on, so that's better. I felt okay.
It's okay. You can live with that.
The ref checking Santana as the Hammer jumps him before the bell. Monsoon, of course, calling it a Pearl Harbor job.
Yeah, we heard that I think 5 or 6 times on this show, whether it be from Monsoon or from Gene Okerlund or whoever else. Definitely, we can put that into the bin of things that sound really weird and not okay now, but were acceptable back in the mid-'80s, apparently.
Santana with a quick comeback, but Hammer rolls out to the floor. He rolls out to the heel side where, of course, the bad guy Lumberjacks are hanging out. They all come over, giving him
playing a card game, having some drinks.
Monsoon outraged. He's yelling they should be throwing him back in the ring. It takes Ricky the Dragon Steamboat to eventually come over and push Valentine back into the ring.
They also note at this point that Steamboat is looking for a shot at the Intercontinental title himself. So that apparently was a story that they were going to be going with coming out of this.
Santana with an atomic drop, then a knee lift, and Hammer bails outside again. JYD's there to throw Hammer back in.
Talk about a guy who's been in one way, shape, or form on like almost every episode of this podcast, Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, and not great matches. Not a great
No.
track record.
No.
We'll get to his match later. Santana with a few punches in the corner, then Hammer counters with an inverted atomic drop. Great selling here of the inverted atomic drop by Tito Santana. Underrated performer for me.
For sure.
Doing this show has made me, in hindsight now, appreciate Tito Santana a little bit more.
Absolutely. He was just the definition of a really solid wrestler. He wasn't spectacular. And I think for me, for whatever reason, I always, as a kid, like watching wrestling during this time period. I mean, I was, 4 years old when this happened. So I wasn't watching this live, but, like I was world class in Mid-South at that age. But watching Tito Santana, I always equated him to Ricky Steamboat, and he was always the lesser wrestler than Steamboat. So I kind of dismissed him, not like thinking he was bad, but just didn't really think of him as being an actively good wrestler, which is clearly foolish because he's, he was very good even in that match with Ric Flair from that WWF show, Royal Albert Hall in 1991 that we reviewed, and he was really good here.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we get Pixels transitioning to later in the match. This match is clipped down, which is that's the guy's doing us a solid, because everything they cut out of this match, based on all the stalling that was going on here, I can't fathom how wildly boring the parts were we didn't see.
Yeah, I feel like, and we'll get to it throughout the show, they did. At first I was annoyed that it was clipped, and I even sent you a message like, hey, do you still want to review this? And we decided to go ahead and do it, and I'm glad we did. They did a great job of the clipping. I don't feel like, granted, we didn't see the parts they cut out, but it doesn't feel as though we missed anything really important in any of these matches that were clipped down a bit.
No, not at all. And so Christmas, like I said, Christmas has come early from the randomizer. If I have to watch if I have to watch Greg the Hammer Valentine, cut out the boring parts. And so we go right to Tito going for his figure four, but Hammer bails out again. Tries to go up the entrance, but Rocky Johnson, Snuka, and the JYD throw him back in. Tito with a punch. Valentine's back out. The babyface Lumberjacks throw him back in. Valentine showing frustration. He looks a lot like I do when I get frustrated seeing a Valentine match on the card of a show I have to review. Santana's fired up. He just gets punches to Hammer in the corner, whips him into the opposite corner. Charges in, eats a huge knee to the face. This is the most exciting thing I've seen in this match so far. Santana dazed, reeling. Valentine with a lazy cover gets a 2 count, and we skip ahead again, missing all of Valentine's hideously boring offense.
Oh, you left out one of the best things I've seen Greg Valentine do, and by that I don't mean good, but I mean entertaining rather than boring, is when he awkwardly steps off the second rope, ostensibly delivering a forearm / axe handle. It's really bad. My notes say, wow, that was reminiscent of Stevie Ray.
It was bad.
It was from the second rope, but it was somehow less athletic than Stevie Ray's first bottom rope leg drop.
So
he also, we should mention that Greg Valentine has some of the worst punches in the history of wrestling for anyone who is a major performer. The problem is that if he's throwing those as like overhand windmilling, like clubbing forearms to the back or to the back of the neck, it's awesome. But when he throws them as regular punches, it looks as though Elvis Presley is doing his windmill guitar thing, but there's no guitar. It's that awkward and weird, like that analogy.
So Valentine throws Tito back out. JYD calls for a timeout, but that's not going to fly. Santana, he's back in. Valentine.
I also love how Guerrilla is not upset at all that the faces are giving Tito a breather.
He's totally fine.
But he was so upset when the heels were doing that for Greg Valentine.
So yeah, Hammer starts to work over Santana's leg. And as he's doing, he slaps Tito in the face twice. Monsoon and Okerlund are appalled, and they literally yelled in unison about how angry they were. Tito reverses the figure four attempt into a small package, 2 count only. We skip ahead again. Santana's making a comeback. Big punches. Hammer falls face first. Santana holds on to Hammer by the tights, not letting him get outside, and we see way too much of Hammer ass crack here. Tito's able to get him in, goes for a figure four, and gets a finger to the eye. Hammer then runs away again. The Lumberjacks throw Valentine back in. No one's taking shots. They're just pushing guys back in. So this is kind of the big difference between a modern Lumberjack match and this match. Everybody, even the heels, are just pushing guys back in. It's just your heelish tactic was to let the guy get a breather.
Yeah, it's also a logic hole because like you're throwing your opponent out to the floor to the Lumberjacks, but then they just throw the guy back in. So the only thing you've done is even if the guys on the floor throw him back in right away, you still are letting the guy rest more than if you would continue to pound on him. So not a smart strategy here. I also, before we get to the finish of this, I loved when at one point Tito was getting the better of a punch exchange, and Gene Okerlund said, and I quote, "Ooh, boom, pa."
One other thing I noted here is that JYD is having the time of his life at ringside. He is so happy out there, smiling, laughing. Great
Almost
time.
having as much fun as he did cutting that promo on Jim Cornette and Jim Cornette's mother at Capital Combat 90.
Santana with a figure four in the middle of the ring on Hammer. I'm screaming for Valentine to tap. Hart gets on the apron, takes the referee as John Studd starts pulling Hammer by the arm to the ropes. Ref makes Santana break the hold. Tito goes after Studd, reaching through the ropes, allowing Hammer to hit Santana from behind. Santana then throws Hammer off into the ropes. Both men bonk heads.
I wrote the exact same thing.
Santana falls down, but he falls down on his back, and Hammer just falls forward, landing on top of him. Gets the 3 count, your winner, in spectacular fashion. I kid, it's in as boring a fashion as you'd expect from Greg the Hammer Valentine. He's still the Intercontinental Champion.
I did not mind this as much as you, but it was not great. The crowd, Hammer was fine. He was good by his Hammer Valentine standards. The crowd was awesome. Tito was awesome here. I was amused. Awesome. Yeah, I was amused by Gene and Guerrilla. The best part of this match was when it ended. I'm not just saying that because it was not a great match, but because Gene, the second this, and it was a quick 3 count, by the way, very fast 3 count. But the second the count is over, Gene yells, "What? Is that it? You've got to be kidding me." It was good times.
We cut to the second match, and what do I see? Hammer Valentine again. Really?
You're going
back
to the Greg
back.
Hammer Valentine time machine. We're going back to July 30th, 1979 for what they dubbed back then an Indian strap match. Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Chief Jay Strongbow here again at Madison Square Garden. And we have maybe the most noteworthy thing about this match. If in a weird fever dream you ever wondered what it would be like to hear Jesse Ventura as the lone announcer on a wrestling match, this will answer that question for you.
I literally wrote, I'd like to announce that this is my final podcast. I can't go on any longer. Jesse warned me I was going to get back-to-back Hammer Valentine, but I was going to get it twice on this tape, but I wasn't ready for back-to-back. That's what I wasn't ready for. I wanted a break, and I got no palate cleanser in between. Oh. I just had to go straight in.
Luckily, this was a pretty quick match, or a pretty quick presentation of this match. We have Greg the Hammer.
At this point, I wanted to make mention. You mentioned the date was 1979, July 30th, 1979. I believe this would be, up until this point of the podcast, the oldest match we've reviewed on the show.
Yes,
it won't stand by the end of this tape, but as of this moment, it is the oldest match we reviewed. 1979. Jesse also says it's the first time that Madison Square Garden has sanctioned an Indian strap match.
Yes, which I was wondering what the rules were going to be for this.
So was I.
And we don't really still know by the end of it. We'll get to that later. But Hammer jumps Jay Strongbow at the beginning of the match. And this is, by the way, they have leather. There's a leather strap. It is connecting them. This is not the...
The Freebirds and the Rock and Roll Express.
Yes, this is not the Corporal Punishment match from Capital Combat 11 years later. This is your more traditional strap match, at least in terms of them being attached by a strap. Greg the Hammer Valentine jumps him early with punches in the corner, chokes him in the corner. Hammer then starts punching him with the strap wrapped around his fist. I know that Chief Jay Strongbow is two things in this match: old and bloody.
Yes. And Jesse Ventura tells us to watch the end of the bout because I assumed it was because the natural reaction is to just skip a match with Greg the Hammer Valentine in it. But okay, Jesse, I'll stick around.
You are relentless. You're gonna turn Greg the Hammer Valentine into like the most popular wrestler on the internet if you keep this up.
All right.
Jesse does warn us about that, and it will be even better and more incredible than he was letting on. He does it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's punches, it's choking.
It's 1979 pro wrestling in the WWF. I mean, it is what it is.
That's what we're getting with the strap so far. Strongbow is busted open early with the punches from the strap. Valentine's working over the cut. He's hitting the Chief, but starts to get no effect. Strongbow starts to do his high stepping around the ring.
Well, as Jesse says, he's starting to dance and rock and roll, which is not what I would describe what Jay Strongbow was doing, or is not what I would describe Jay Strongbow as doing ever. But he was moving. He was Strongbowing up, as it were, and then he starts. There are a couple pretty cool spots in here with the use of the leather strap, pulling guys going out of the ring and then pulling them back in to hit him, and then throw him back out of the ring and then pull him back into the ring and hit him again. I did enjoy that from Greg the Hammer Valentine here.
Yeah, we skip ahead. They're brawling on the floor outside. Strongbow's ramming Valentine into the guardrail a few times. We have old ladies at ringside here like we did for the Battle of Atlanta show, but these ladies were not as into it as my favorite wrestling fans ever from the Battle of Atlanta show. Hammer is busted open as well now at this point. They're trading punches in the corner. The ref gets too close, so Strongbow kicks him out of the way. He gets close to them again, and Strongbow kicks him harder this time. And I'm not sure why the ref was getting too close to them. Again, we don't know the rules exactly. But the ref is down now from that kick, and then dudes come out from the back. We get mulleted Tito Santana, Dominic DiNucci, and Ivan Putski with a beard, which...
We're getting a great line from Jesse Ventura. Ivan Putski with a beard. That's a classic look.
A classic look.
Jesse just... Oh, God. Jesse is so great here. He delivered. Absolutely.
They're trying to separate the Chief and Valentine. The bell rings. The match is over. I have no idea how you were supposed to win this match. I still don't know. But I do know the match is over at this point.
A double disqualification in the first ever sanctioned Indian strap match in Madison Square Garden in this blood feud. Apparently, there can be too much violence, and we've breached that threshold. And so yeah, they continue to go at it.
Yeah, Valentine's unhooked. He's unhooked from the strap at this point, and
he grabs a chair from ringside. They are both on the floor, ringside right, if you're looking at the hard cam. And I had to watch this twice to fully grasp what happened.
Same.
But a large fan that does not look dissimilar from the fan that we referred to that Butch Reed was yelling at, or to be more accurate, was yelling at Butch Reed while Butch Reed then yelled at the camera at the Capital Combat show. This fan reaches over the guardrail and grabs the chair while it is in Greg the Hammer Valentine's hands to try to stop him from hitting Jay Strongbow. Greg Valentine wheels around, and I take every single thing that I said about Greg Valentine's punches back, because he waylays this fan. He beats the hell out of this fan with 2 or 3 hard shots before the police get in and break it up.
This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Greg Valentine do. I have never. I love. I was like, I had to watch it multiple times. I'm like, is that a real fan? Is that a wrestler? That guy can't be a wrestler. And I'm looking, no, it's a real fan. And Valentine beats the crap out of this guy with forearms and punches to the back, and then it's absolute insanity. And now I want to watch more 70s wrestling to see how insane these fans are. This was. Strongbow ends up like pulling Valentine off the fan and then talks to him and then starts brawling with Valentine at ringside.
No, this was something else. I feel like we've gotten very close to things like this happening on shows that we've watched. I go back to the last Battle of Atlanta when the fan pulled the shirt off of the now
Mr.
maskless Mr. Wrestling 1, and the police got involved, but there's no wrestler on fan or fan on wrestler physical violence. But it happened here, and oh boy, was it awesome.
And then, like you mentioned, the police come. The NYPD is literally talking to the fan in the front row. You can see it on camera. They've got 4 or 5 officers.
Well, and the other interesting thing is that the camera zooms in on it. Like they're covering this as like an event rather than a show. Like this is a thing that's happening, so we need to show this. At this point, we also get another great Jesse moment.
I have this written down too.
There's a rather wide man who is trying to help break things up. We can't tell who it is initially.
He's in a suit. He's in a suit helping to break things up.
And Jesse Ventura says, and I quote, "Guerrilla Monsoon is looking real bulky here in 1979.
No, he goes, looks like Monsoon lost a couple of pounds from 79 to today. He looks real bulky out there.
Yes. Tremendous. Just I howled with laughter as I do every once in a while when we watch these wackier shows.
I can imagine Jesse in the recording studio alone, seeing Monsoon on there and making that joke and cracking himself up. That was great.
Exactly. And it worked for the rest of us too. So that then brings us to
Howard Finkel announces. Well, this is when he makes the announcement that that match went 7 minutes 46 seconds. The referee DQ'd both men. This is a draw as the decision. So I
have a lot of questions because those are 2 different finishes, and neither of those finishes should be possible in the match.
Strap match.
Yes.
So if you thought crappy WWE finishes were a modern wrestling thing, this was 1979, right? So it goes way back.
Oh, yes. A time-honored tradition in many places, including this company. So with that, we move on to a tornado tag team match between Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob Orton teaming up to take on Jimmy Superfly Snuka and Junkyard Dog, a natural team if there ever was one. And this is explained by Jesse. He says that WWF officials had to try to figure out a way to handle these crazy men. More referees? No, too dangerous for the referees. A cage match? No, they can't do that because there's too many people for that small of a structure. So they settled on a tornado tag match, which is basically no tags, all 4 men in around the ring.
Match. Yeah, Texas
exactly.
Tornado.
All 4 men can be in around the ring at any time. They do tell us at one point, I believe, that there is no disqualification in this match. So I guess this is a more violent match rule set wise than the Indian strap match we're led to believe here.
Yeah, it's all Snuka and JYD early. Piper and Orton bouncing around into each other. Snuka knocks Orton to the floor. We get a 2-on-1 on Piper, but he runs away. Piper and Snuka are fighting on the floor, and in the ring, JYD hits Orton with a slow motion clothesline.
Yeah, I feel like it needs another name. I don't know what it would be, but this, again, it pains me to criticize JYD because he was my childhood hero in the mid 80s, but oh boy, this was not good. His arm is out. He's moving at a lilting pace, and by the strictest of definitions, his arm does make contact, and I guess you could call it a clothesline. Yes. But it's not good.
No, Snuka posted on the outside, allowing Orton and Piper to double team the JYD. Now, Piper here, this is like 83, 84, I'm thinking.
He is incredible here. He is so good.
Everything he did was great. Everything.
Absolutely. This was and this is without even getting to hear a Piper promo as part of this. This was a Roddy Piper tour de force. Like if you were going to show somebody what in ring, like Roddy Piper at his best was, particularly by the time he made it to WWF, because the longer he was there, the more
cartoonish he got.
Yeah, the more cartoonish he was, and the less I found him to be the less entertaining in ring. But he was so good here, like a different way, in his own way. He was like Terry Funk levels of entertaining in the sense that everything he did, every step he took, every time he got hit with the move, every time he hit a move, every time he was between moves, everything was entertaining.
Everything. I mean, we're talking a poke to the eye is entertaining. His cocky covers. Everything he did he was in his prime here, and this was great. Begging off of Snuka. I loved every single minute of Piper in action here. If you're going to watch this tape for anything, it's to watch how great Piper was in this 83-84 time frame.
Well, and I feel like we finally got something on this podcast, this many episodes in, that really, we both knew how great Piper was, but that really displayed that for us to watch here in current times as we go through this. I have to mention, are we ready to get to the part where there's the first jump forward? Because I've used the phrase on this show once today, and we've used it many times. There are things that make me howl with laughter, and the cut, the jumps that they did in this match were hilarious. Because we get this spot where Orton and Piper lock on reverse chin locks.
Yes, they both have chin locks on JYD and Snuka respectively.
And it jumps. We basically get a cut to where we miss the entirety of the long headlock spot, which is just so great.
It was great. They jumped right to it, and then the babyfaces tried to fight free, couldn't. Then they put on sleepers. Piper and Orton put on sleepers. Then it gets
even better. Because they do, this happens again. They have the sleepers on, and we move ahead again with the sleepers still on. And what happens next is awesome.
Now,
so you have...
Okay, go ahead. You're going to talk about being in the sleeper hold, right?
Yes.
Okay, this was so great.
This is honestly one of my favorite things that I've seen in a wrestling match in the
it needs to come back immediately. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. And the dozens of podcasts that we've done where we've reviewed these old shows, this is right up there as the best thing I've seen. Orton and Piper each have their respective opponents, Snuka and JYD, in sleepers. And they're not standing, they're on the mat at this point. And the faces are both, they're both on the verge of going out, but they're reaching for each other. So we as they're reaching for each other, we get another cut and we move forward. And now they're still reaching for each other, but so they're seated. They clasp hands. They're doing a test of strength with each other.
You've jumped too far ahead. Hold on. You missed some awesome stuff. Before we get to that, you missed some awesome... We love the details here on this podcast. We love the little things. And so before they got down to the ground, they're in the sleeper hold, and Piper is kicking Snuka in the stomach while he has his own sleeper on JYD.
This was fantastic. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because I did have this written down here. This is, again, we talk about Piper being a tour de force. This is probably the best example of that. Is yes, he has a sleeper on one man,
and he's kicking the other man.
He's the hatred is flowing through his veins, and just the Roddy Piperness is flowing through his veins so much that he has to kick the other guy that is in his sleeper, courtesy of Bob Orton, while he's holding on to the other sleeper. Fantastic stuff.
Now, when they're both down on their knees there, and the first time that they reach out to each other, you get JYD and Snuka in the sleepers trying to reach out to each other, hands extended, and Orton and Piper at the same time both slap the hands away, and the camera was zoomed in on the hands. So you just see these other hands come in and slap it away. This was top-notch camera work here. This was cool heelish things, and it was really neat to see, which all built to what you were about to say with both of them down. when they actually lock hands like a test of strength.
Yes. And at first, when you see it happen, you're like, why are they doing this? Why are these two tag team partners engaging in a test of strength while they're being choked out in sleeper holds? And then you realize very quickly what they're doing. As they clasp hands, they pull toward each other and it rams the heels' heads together and gets them out of the sleeper holds. This is such a cool, unique thing.
What a creative way to break the hold there after a really long sleeper hold. That was great. That was I loved every minute of that. Orton's thrown into the buckle. He goes upside down, but not over, just straight down in the ring, almost dying.
Straight on his head. So yeah, he basically goes upside down into the corner, Shawn Michaels style, but instead of going all the way up and coming back down on his feet, he goes all the way up to where he basically is almost like in the tree of woe position, and then lets go and pile drives himself basically in the corner. It was I have not seen this before, and I don't want to see anyone do this again because it looked painful.
He survived, and he's actually back on the top rope, and he's going to do the big Snuka splash onto Snuka himself. And Orton's on the top rope. He wobbles on the top rope, and I was legit nervous he was going to fall off.
This is a tall guy. Bob Orton, again, if you've never seen him before, just picture a less muscular version of his son, Randy Orton, standing on the top rope and then almost falling off the top rope. Scary stuff.
He channels his inner Russ Francis from the AWA Super Clash 2 show that we reviewed on this podcast.
But it was not much better. It was somewhere between Jimmy Snuka and Russ Francis on the top rope splash scale. And yes, I will grant you, it was closer to Russ Francis than Jimmy Snuka.
Yes, because he lands on his feet when he comes off the ropes, and then he comes down for the splash. Snuka with his knees up, and Orton ends up saving this whole thing by selling the knees to the stomach by just flipping over and after hitting the knees handstand style. And then Piper throws Snuka into the post again on the outside. Piper trips the Junkyard Dog from the outside. Orton does something we can't see. I was just complimenting the camera work, and now we can't see. The camera's showing us Snuka down on the ground. Orton did something. He ends up rolling up the dog. They get the 3 count. Your winners, Roddy Piper, the Ace Cowboy, Bob Orton.
Part of the problem with that finish, and it wasn't, yes, the camera work wasn't great, but I think when you said he hit him with something, I think that's about as much as can actually truthfully be said about what happened. He just kind of collided and grabbed him and fell on him and got the pin. I don't know if that was the plan, but it was not. There was no discernible move that took place here.
It's unbelievable that we're only 30 minutes into this video. It feels so much longer at this point.
Yeah, well, this is a 9-match video, but don't worry, there's some stuff that we'll get through very quickly.
Yeah, things get exciting here. Things turn around real quick, and I think for me it turns around with this. This was probably one of the coolest things we've seen on this show. This is the all-women's Battle Royal, joined already in progress. This match is from sometime in the late 60s. They don't know a date. They don't tell us a date. They tell us just the late 60s.
And Jesse explains that sometimes a Battle Royal is also called an over-the-top match. Then explains to us when this match is from. He says that the rules are different, though. It's only 10 women as opposed to a 20-man Battle Royal. And that you have to pin your opponent. Throwing them over the top rope is not the way to get an elimination.
Not in a women's Battle Royal. Yeah, that's the rules specifically for a women's Battle Royal, is that you have to win by pinfall.
Yes, exactly. He then says that if you think about it, that actually makes it a good deal more difficult to eliminate people trying to catch a pinfall with all these other wrestlers around, which is true, and I liked him pointing that out.
Yeah, he's very correct. That is a wildly unfair disadvantage to the women.
Yes. Yeah. He also then tells us that not only does the winner get a cash prize, they will get a shot at the fabulous Moolah, who he explains that, yes, she was the champion back then too, and she still is now.
Yeah, he basically says, quote, "That's right, Moolah was the champion back then too." And if you know the history of Moolah, that is a really funny line by Jesse.
Yes. We transition to we have Guerrilla Monsoon on commentary for this. They don't really explain to us a lot of who these people are. Again, this is very clipped down, very short. The thing that I noted is that the Masked Venus
Yes.
is one of the most ridiculous visual presentations of anybody we've seen on this show. To describe it, this is a woman who is wearing a floral print one-piece swimsuit, black fishnet stockings, and a Mr. Wrestling 2 mask.
Yes, it's a white mask with
the black.
With the black,
it is the Mr. Wrestling mask. It's literally that mask. We have a lot of things that happen. We are down to Sue Green, Peggy Patterson, Donna Cristianello, and Paula Kay are the final 4 of these 10 women.
Yeah. Now we started with 10, and we saw 8, and then all of a sudden it clipped down to 6. We have no idea who any of the women were, how the eliminations happened. We just were seeing clips, and it was more of just a, hey, this is cool looking.
This is more of, hey, this happened.
Yeah,
we need something to fill out to get to 90 minutes on the tape, was the way they presented this. But there was some interesting stuff in here. I will say that by far the most notable thing about this match is that the referee was beyond terrible.
This guy,
he's probably 6'14". He's very tall. We even have Guerrilla making fun of how bad he is.
We'll get there for the finish. Unbelievable.
Even before the finish, he completely misses a count, like his back is to it. And Guerrilla starts screaming as though if he yells loud enough, his voice will reach back through the years to the late 60s, and this referee will make the right count. It looks as though he's like headbanging as he counts. Like he's so tall and so awkward and so gangly. And then when he gets down, he's not even like looking at the shoulders. He's really not even looking up. He just has his head down. He's slapping the mat and he's bouncing his head up and down. It's like if Van Hammer was a referee in the 60s, this is what he would be.
Yeah. 2 of the women held down the Masked Venus to eliminate her. And
I was not happy about that.
No, and that brought us down to the final 4, like you mentioned. Sue Green, Peggy Patterson, Donna Cristianello, and Paula Kay. Now, Green and Patterson, they were doing double slingshots. They do it again, double monkey flips. Now,
this double slingshot, this looked like, it almost looked like a Canadian destroyer.
We're not to that one yet. We'll get there. This was just kind of the gradual progression from the earlier part of the match until you got to the final 4. It was just like forearms and snapmares, and now we're actually getting into some moves. So you get after we have no idea what the ref is doing. So Donna comes to check as Paula is pinning Peggy, and we have no idea what's going on here. So how can I describe how this happened? So one woman was let me see who this is. This is Sue Green. I want to get this clear. Okay, so Sue Green is left with.
Are we sure this isn't Trent Beretta's mom?
Sue Green's left with Donna and Paula because the referee he goes to count 2. It looks like 3 to me. Monsoon's screaming, "What's the ref looking for?" Then he counts 3, and okay, that's the finish. And then she's out.
The girl has a great line too, where it's like, "Well, you just decided to count to 2 twice. That's 4."
Yeah, so this was all wildly
Guerrilla,
confusing.
if you're familiar with Guerrilla Monsoon, like one of his hallmarks, other than talking about like the occipital protuberance, like doing like medical terminology, his other thing is he's always getting on the referees, nobody more than his own son, Joey Morella. And so it was amusing to hear him with absolute total reason here. Just unloading on this unnamed referee. And so this guy was no Scrappy McGowan, that's for sure.
No, this was the finish. So Paula with a slingshot sends Sue into Donna, who basically hits her with a backdrop. She's in backdrop position, waiting for the slingshot. Backdrop.
It's a Canadian destroyer,
and it's basically a Canadian destroyer, and in the late 60s. So yes. Donna then goes to do the same thing, but this time Sue. He goes to do the same thing, sending Sue into Paula for the backdrop, but Sue reverses, and she slingshots Donna into Paula. who backdrops her partner because they'd been double teaming the entire 2-on-1 part here, and she ends up landing on top of her Canadian destroyer form and ends up accidentally pinning her own partner, eliminating her. The crowd at this moment goes berserk. They went absolutely nuts. They're jumping up and down for this.
Yes, in this very small building. We're never told where this is.
No.
Again, we're not told where this is. We're given a decade as to when this took place. That's all we have to go off of here.
And before Donna realizes what happened, Sue Green just rolls her up, gets the pin, winning the Battle Royal. Sue Green's your winner. This was super cool to see. The 60s crowd towards the end when they were going nuts was really neat to see. I mean, it looked like a time capsule with everyone in their 60s outfits, and this was all colorized, and it looked phenomenal. It was
the video
really
quality
neat.
was actually far better than I would have expected it to be for some pretty obscure 60s wrestling film footage. It was better and more clear than the footage from the 79 match that we watched on the same show. And time capsule is a perfect way to describe this. Fun thing they threw in here. I certainly did not expect that we would be getting to see anything like this on any show that we were reviewing. So yeah, that was fun. And then that takes us to a 20-man battle royal, which at first it's a little confusing because they throw to it and the battle royal is in progress.
Yes.
But that footage of this battle royal in progress is only just for Jesse to explain to us what a battle royal is, because then we have the introductions. And it's funny because, all these things are clipped for the matches, but we get the full introduction of all 20 men who I'll rattle off here quickly.
Now wait, let me give the date for this. This was July 23rd, 1984, again back in Madison Square Garden for this battle royal. Now here come the participants.
Yes, we have the Iron Sheik.
Yep.
Cowboy Bob Orton, Antonio Inoki.
That Antonio Inoki.
Yes, the Antonio Inoki. If you had money on when would the first time Antonio Inoki appeared on our podcast be, it probably wouldn't be on a WWF Coliseum home video tape, but I'm pretty sure.
1984. Unbelievable. Yes. Yeah, I was shocked to see him in here.
Yeah, so there he is. We also have Rene Goulet, Butcher Vachon, Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch, looking no younger here in 1984 than he did at Slamboree in 1995. Exactly the same. He may have actually looked older here. We have Paul Orndorff, who does look younger than he did in 1995 at Slamboree. We have the Samoan Sika, Jose Luis Rivera, Tony Gurria out to wrestle instead of break up a fight, Jay Strongbow, the Samoan Afa.
Now, Chief Jay Strongbow looked like he'd rather be anywhere else but in this battle royal. He couldn't be more disinterested.
Yes. We have a pre-Brooklyn Brawler Steve Lombardi, a baby-faced Steve Lombardi, which was interesting to see. We have a man named Ron Shaw.
Ron Shaw, okay.
A man named Charlie Fulton.
Johnny Fulton. Mm-hmm.
Charlie Fulton.
Was it? No?
It was Charlie Fulton.
Charlie Fulton? Okay.
It's Charlie Fulton. We have a man named Terry Daniels.
Stop. Now wait. So we don't, you've got to see this. So we hear Howard Finkel as we're seeing these people, these legends coming out, a lot of famous people coming out for this battle royal. We hear from Amarillo, Texas, Terry Daniels. And I'm like, oh man, I thought we were going to get Terry Funk. I got all excited.
Yeah, instead we get this short young guy who looks terrified to be out there. It also is funny because, like, again, you mentioned we have all these, these legendary names, and then you hear these names, and it reminded me of like back in the day when you would buy a video game and it would have like a bunch of like the real players from whatever sport it was, but then they'd fill out the teams with fake names. That's what this felt like with some of these guys coming out here. But then also Tito Santana, Sergeant Slaughter, and a very young Samu in 1983.
Now, Tito Santana, again, this is we've seen him in every single match except the 60s Women's Battle Royal. Yes. He's been on every match in this tape.
He may have been the Masked Venus. We don't know.
and then we have, you
Well,
mentioned...
Howard Finkel explains to us what a battle royal is.
Yes, but you mentioned that we had Sika, the Samoan, Afa, the Samoan, and Samu, the Samoan. They did not come out together. It was so weird. They came out individually at random times.
Also, Guerrilla called him Samula.
Samula the entire time.
It was not quite as amusing as Paul Glory, but it was close. It was close. Go back and listen to our Royal Albert Hall podcast, WWF at Royal Albert Hall, to hear what we're talking about with Paul Glory being uttered multiple times by Lord Alfred Hayes, who I actually was surprised was not a competitor in this Battle Royal.
Yeah, everyone starts brawling as the match starts. Slaughter and Iron Sheik pair off immediately in the corner. We get a jump cut, and Guerrilla tells us several minutes have gone by, and I see several dudes were eliminated at some point. We don't know what happened.
Nowhere near as many men, I should say, were eliminated as he told us, though. Like, if you were listening to this as a radio broadcast, you would think there were like 8 guys left. I think there were 18 of the 20 men were still in this.
So Adrian Adonis gets crotched on the top turnbuckle. He falls back into the ring. Antonio Inoki goes to work on him. Inoki hits it in Seguri, knocking Adonis between the ropes to the floor. I wrote down that I immediately need to go and watch more classic Adrian Adonis matches. This guy was incredible. Awesome. This is like pre-fat flower shop late 80s version of Adonis that I'm familiar with. This guy was phenomenal.
No, 70s to early 80s Adrian Adonis is incredible. He and the crazy thing was, even when he got heavier, he was still, while not visually a great athlete, he was still far more athletic than guys his size normally would be. But no, he back in his prime, he was great, and we got a glimpse of that here. It was also a kick to see him wrestling Antonio Inoki here in Madison Square Garden. And Inoki, they would bring in Inoki from time to time to do these shows, but still, I wasn't expecting to see him here. And yeah, he hits that enziguri that knocks Adonis directly to the floor, like you said, and it did not eliminate him, knocked him through the ropes. But I loved, and we saw it several times in this match, where the enziguri from Inoki was so strong that alone would send men careening through or over the top rope.
Samoans are trying to dump Murdoch, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs for Adrian to come help. Yes. And he does. Adonis then charges at Slaughter, but Slaughter backdrops him over the top rope, eliminating Adrian Adonis, the star of the match for me. Dick Murdoch, he pushes Sarge over, and Sarge pulls Murdoch with him. So Adonis and Murdoch and Sarge are all out, and we're down to 6 guys.
We start getting these weird camera shots at this point where they do these extreme zooms on the action to where you cannot see anything that's going on. It was driving me crazy. Like, if I'm in the production truck and there are, well, now it's down to, 6 guys, but even then, in a 20-man battle royal, the thing I'm not going to be saying is zoom into someone's pores.
No, and we're down to 6 guys. Inoki's still in, and he dumps Samu over the top rope with a backdrop.
Samula was out.
And we never have to hear Monsoon call Samula the entire time again. Oh, gosh, that was brutal. Orton misses an elbow drop on Inoki. Inoki then, with a kick to the back of Orton's head, the enziguri again, knocks another guy over the top rope. Orton hangs on. He's staying on the apron, but finally falls off. Another elimination by Antonio Inoki. And we're down to the final 3. It's Inoki, Rene Goulet, and that dude Ron Shaw.
Yes. Well, and that is, if you remember the one Royal Rumble that we reviewed, and we talked about how it was kind of sad that show did not have like the random dude that you wouldn't think had a chance to win it as one of the last 3 or 4 guys. Ron Shaw, the human being named Ron Shaw, was who filled that role to perfection here.
Yes, so Shaw and Goulet, they try to double team Inoki. Shaw's holding Inoki as Goulet charges in, but Inoki gets free. Goulet nails Shaw, who goes up and over the top rope. He's eliminated, and the Garden goes nuts for Inoki here. He hits another enziguri. grabs Goulet, sends him over the top rope, and holy crap, Antonio Inoki wins this battle royal. I did not see that coming. I texted you immediately.
Yes.
Antonio Inoki won the battle royal? What?
No, it was awesome. It was cool to see Inoki here. And the thing that I wrote down that I was thinking when I was watching this was it was fascinating to see here in what this you said this was 1984.
Correct.
To see Antonio Inoki. And obviously, I mean, this a wrestler the stature of Antonio Inoki is different than some of the other Japanese wrestlers that they would have playing the evil foreign heel. But it was just wild to see a Japanese wrestler presented as this 100% babyface overcoming the odds to win a battle royal in mid 80s WWF. A sign of Inoki's stature and the political clout that he had in wrestling. And the respect with which he was going to be treated when he was there. He had Inoki winning. He had his red towel. He jumped up and down. He did that classic jumping arms in the air Antonio Inoki celebration. This made me very happy.
This was great. And the greatness continues as we roll to October 17th, 1983, still at Madison Square Garden. This would be the Intercontinental Championship match between the challenger, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, with his manager, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, against the champion, the magnificent Don Muraco, in a steel cage match. This is one of the most famous cage matches of all time.
You know what else is crazy about this? This match took place only 6 days prior to the last Battle of Atlanta, Georgia Championship Wrestling in the Omni in Atlanta.
Crazy.
Same year, 6 days prior, two of the most legendary steel cage matches of all time.
This one match is so legendary, and it changed the course of wrestling history because so many future stars were influenced by this match. Mick Foley, Mankind, Cactus Jack, as we've talked about, Mick Foley has written often about how that night was the night that changed his life and made him want to be a pro wrestler. He was
in the crowd.
In the crowd. Also in the crowd that night, Tommy Dreamer. He was in the building that night as a kid. So was Bubba Ray Dudley and Little Guido. They were all there that night and experienced this match and all led them down the path to become professional wrestlers.
It's also wild when you think about it that in the early days of ECW, pre-Extreme Eastern Championship Wrestling, Jimmy Superfly Snuka was one of the featured veteran big-name wrestlers in that company.
Pat Patterson and Guerrilla Monsoon are our play-by-play guys. And this isn't a voiceover. They're there, and they're sitting ringside.
Yes.
And this is, let's talk about this cage a little bit. This is a chain link fence here. So this is the NWA. This is very similar to the last Battle of Atlanta, but without the roof and more like poles around the top.
Yes.
and the sides of the cage. So this was a dirty looking chain link fence. This wasn't brand new rolled out chain link fence here.
No, this was a steel cage meant for violence and bloodshed. This was not a blue bar structure. However, it did have the blue bar cage match rules in that it was escape the cage. It was
only,
not
no pins.
Pinfall. Yes, it was escape the cage only. The classic WWF cage match rules. So that was a little interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a steel cage, a fenced cage with those sorts of rules. The greatness of this match starts before Jimmy Snuka even gets in the ring, as Don Muraco is so intense and so ready to get his hands on Jimmy Snuka that he runs to each corner of the ring and like throws a running flying forearm at the cage.
Yes, and
just because he wants to get through the cage, I guess, and get to Snuka on the floor. I am already fired up for this, and the crowd is going crazy before it even starts.
Snuka's walking all around ringside before getting into the cage. These people are so ready for this match. The participants are so ready for this match, and both men are in. The door is closed, and it's all Snuka early until Muraco hits him just with a low blow. Slingshot, and Snuka goes face first into the cage right away. Like, this is very early in the match, and he is bleeding all over to start. Snuka tries to climb to the top, but Muraco catches him, and Muraco slams Snuka's head into the top of the cage where there's like a pole running along the top of the cage there.
Well, not only is there a pole running across the top of the cage, but it's also, again, like you mentioned, this is not again, it's not going to fall over. This isn't like a perfectly constructed, super clean cage. Like the triangular like points, repeating points of the cage, those are sticking up over the bar. And so if you're slamming someone's head off there, it's very believable to the crowd that it would cut somebody.
Yeah, Muraco has Snuka in a fireman's carry, but Snuka fights out. It looked like something terrifying was going to happen there, but Snuka's able to battle out.
On the top rope. Like if this was 20 years later, 30 years later, you're expecting like a Death Valley driver.
Sure, yeah.
To the ring, or a Death Valley driver out to the floor through a table. Like it had that sort of visual to it, but thankfully none of that happened.
No, he knocks Muraco off the top. He's down inside the ring, but Muraco's back up before Snuka could even climb down. Muraco's back on the attack. He slams him down. Another low blow by Muraco.
At this point, you can tell that like Snuka is bleeding a lot.
A ton.
Like this is right up there with anything we've seen yet on all the episodes of this podcast in terms of the level of blood here. This was a cage match, absolutely.
Snuka reverses a whip in, and Muraco goes upside down into the corner. And then Muraco goes into the cage. He's busted. He's bleeding everywhere now. Snuka with a fist drop off the second rope. Headbutt by Snuka.
Oh, yes, the blood transfusion headbutt. My favorite and most disturbing thing in wrestling. When two men are bleeding profusely and decide to swap the plasma.
Snuka off the ropes hits a jumping headbutt. And this knocks Muraco back. He tumbles through the ropes. He's by the cage door. The door is opened, and he falls out to the floor. What? The match is over already? I was not expecting this to be the finish. It came completely out of nowhere.
I loved it. It
was so great. Yeah.
In one sense, like I wanted to see more because I love the hate and the violence and the blood in these steel cage matches. But I thought this was such a great, smart finish. It was so well executed. And just in the context of like booking a company, booking a territory at that point, doing a finish like this, it's good in a vacuum, but it's even better overall because you're conditioning the fans to like not just think that it can only end a certain way or it can only end 20 minutes into a cage match. Like this is perfect.
Yeah, the winner and still Intercontinental Champions, the magnificent Muraco. The crowd is angry, and so is the Superfly. So
let's talk about the Intercontinental Championship belt. By the way, this is not the early '90s Intercontinental Championship belt that I think a lot of people associate with that championship. You know, Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart holding the title.
Belt. That's a gorgeous championship.
Oh, it's absolutely classic. It's not the NWA TV title of the late '80s, but it's close. But this belt, it is green
strap.
It looks much more like a boxing championship you would see in Rocky than a pro wrestling championship.
It's a small, very heavy silver, very thick silver plate, and on the green leather strap there. Yeah, definitely not the best look for an Intercontinental Championship. That will come later. So Snuka goes out after him, and they're outside the cage. So Snuka's he's standing. He leaves the cage. He's standing outside there. He lets out a huge bloody roar, and it was a great visual. It was awesome.
Like a primal wrestling moment.
Muraco and the belt are thrown back into the cage. Suplex on Muraco. Snuka to the top rope, then to the top of the cage, and I am watching this cage wobble under his foot. And wow, it was. And
he's barefoot. Remember that.
He is barefoot, standing on top of this cage, and this cage will wobble. And it was making me nervous. I know how it ends, but I was still like, holy cow! He hits the Superfly splash off the cage. The garden goes crazy. People are both cheering and also in total shock. And,
1983. Think about the this type of wrestling we've seen on this show, meaning this videotape that we're watching to this point. It's mostly punching and kicking and choking and, weapon shots, stuff like that. That is largely in the United States what you got
Yes.
out of pro wrestling. And then here you have this thing that, we've talked about a few different times, things that felt like they were beamed in from like 30 years later. That happened on shows, like that backdrop into powerbomb combination of the women's match from the AWA show, that Hulk Hogan superplex off the top of the cage on the Big Boss Man on that 1989 Saturday Night's Main Event show. This takes the cake by far over those. This is absolutely insane to see in 1983. I mean, to be honest, seeing a guy do a perfectly executed top rope splash in 1983 was pretty wild in and of itself. But to see off the top of a cage, it's mind-blowing. I mean, it would be, if you see someone do that now in modern wrestling on a televised wrestling show, it still is a big moment.
No, Snuka just doing the splash as his finisher off the top rope was so neat and innovative and creative to see, and so athletic.
Well, it made him a star.
It was the stuff that people talked about coming out of every show in 82, 83 was because Snuka would do that splash differently every now. It wasn't the same splash every time. So people would be like, oh, what did he do at this show? What did he do at the show you saw? And it was a thing. So him going off the top of the cage, absolutely spectacular. This is one of the most iconic moments, not only in WWF history, but in cage match history.
Oh, without a doubt.
And yeah, absolutely phenomenal to see that. And just to be clear, Snuka legit leaps as high as he can for this splash.
Yeah.
He's not just
stepping off the cage.
Yes.
Yeah. He doesn't just take a step and let gravity take hold. He hits this top rope splash off the cage, or the splash, I should say, off the top of the cage, exactly the way he would normally hit the splash. Like there's no half-assing it. He's not playing it safe here. This is wild stuff.
Snuka celebrates with the belt. He spits on Muraco, drops the belt onto him. Everyone's still on their feet as he walks to the back.
This visual is awesome. Snuka grabs the belt. He's not the champion, but as you said, he stands over and we get a great visual like from behind, like a low camera shot looking up, seeing this happen. He spits on him and then he just drops the belt on him like that's not what I was here for. What I just did is what I was here for. This whole thing, from the moment that we shifted from the previous segment to this match, every moment of this was awesome.
This was so great. I'm so glad we got to watch that. That was so great. Now we go 2 months later to December 26, 1983 for a rematch where Don Muraco and his manager, Captain Lou Albano, take on Jimmy Superfly Snuka and his new manager, Arnold Skaaland. And Skaaland just runs wild early as Muraco doesn't take him seriously, and he keeps getting bested. Even Albano gets a shot from Skaaland, and so that was a little fun to watch the old man have his moment.
Well, Skaaland, by the way, like he looks exactly like you'd expect an old wrestler turned manager to look. Like he can still move like a wrestler, but he's short, he's out of shape, he's thinning hair, he's wearing just regular trunks, he's got boots on but no knee pads, no elbow pads. So he looks the part, but he looked totally fine here doing some stuff early.
When Albano gets in there, Pat Patterson yells, "Look at that slob."
Yes, there's a few moments. There's one, it's coming up a little bit later, but I have to mention it, where Pat Patterson says that when you punch Lou Albano in the stomach, he doesn't feel anything because of all that glob there. Great moment. The only thing that would have been better is if it was Jesse Ventura saying it, but it was still amusing. We
had Snuka with a chop, and Albano answers by punching Snuka in the balls, which made me laugh.
Yes, that was fantastic.
Yeah. How has Albano ever been a babyface? He's easily such a hateable guy. I'm watching him in here. I'm like, he used to be a babyface? Doesn't make any sense to me. Well,
how about just going back quickly to that low blow when Guerrilla Monsoon seemingly doesn't notice that it's a low blow and says, "Oh, that might have caught a nerve."
Yes, he said it was he hit him on the inside of the thigh. Maybe might have hit a nerve. Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah.
So Muraco from the corner climbs to the top rope. He drives a knee to the face, sending him down to the mat, like just driving him down with the knee. This was brutal.
This was the reverse version of that move that Dick Murdoch used at Slamboree 95, that move that I mentioned Richard Morton would use as his finisher, and a big move for Hiroshi Tenzan in New Japan, of all people. But yeah, seeing Don Muraco here using that move was pretty awesome. I had not thought about Don Muraco in a long time. We haven't seen him yet on this podcast. I thought he was awesome in both of these matches. He's unique. He's big, but he's not in great shape, but he's not out of shape. He moves just differently than a lot of other wrestlers. He does just weird, unique stuff. Like he did a Mongolian chop, and then he did a thumb to the throat.
Yes.
He did this awesome, like vicious, just standing back elbow where he got a wide stance and then just threw this nasty back elbow. Just a really unique, interesting guy to watch.
Very much so. And Monsoon gets a great line in here too, where he goes, Albano's carrying around 320 pounds plus on a 130-pound frame.
Yeah.
I howled. Muraco holds Snuka for Albano, and Snuka drops down. Albano hits Muraco. Skolin then comes in, attacks Albano. Snuka with a crossbody off the top rope, nails Muraco, gets the 3 count, 10 minutes, 7 seconds. Your winners are Skolin and Snuka.
Yeah, this was totally fine. It was wacky. It could not match the intensity
tone.
of their
different
cage
tone.
match. Totally different tone, but it was fun for what it was, particularly here in this clipped format, which that then takes us to something that's an even more of a clipped format, a curiosity for sure. It is a 6-man tag match from, as Jesse tells us, the mid-70s. It is Haystacks Calhoun teaming with the High Chief Peter Maivia, who is the grandfather of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So we get, between that and Rocky Johnson earlier, we get the entire Rock family lineage here on this show. And their partner, Larry Zbyszko.
A very young Larry Zbyszko.
Very young Larry Zbyszko, with the caveat that Larry Zbyszko is only capable of looking so young. He looks like he's probably in his mid-30s here, even though I'm assuming like 18. Their opponents are Butcher Vachon, Moose Monroe, and Strong Kobayashi.
So
in this match, by the way, we're informed that this took place in Arkansas, and Vince McMahon Jr. Vince McMahon is on the call here, and I have one thing to say about this match. One thing. Vince McMahon on commentary says that Larry Zbyszko is, quote, very fast.
Yeah, they were
false.
No, and Haystacks Calhoun, this was just to give you a clip of him in action at 600 pounds. This is the whole reason the match is here, is that Haystacks Calhoun was gigantic, and he was. We had quick tags, Haystacks in, then Zbyszko, then Maivia. They all hit moves, tagging in and out, beating up on the Moose. And then Calhoun tags back in, hits a splash. Peter Maivia stands on his back as he gets the 3 count. We only see a few seconds of this match. So
then he's going for the pin, and as he goes for the pin, Peter Maivia runs and jumps off of Haystacks' back and delivers a punch or an axe handle or whatever. And then Larry comes and does the same thing. Yeah, we only see a few seconds of this. What I wrote down, and I was familiar with Haystacks Calhoun. I've seen pictures. I probably saw like a clip of a match here or there. But what I wrote down was that I don't know that there's ever been a wrestler who looked more like his name than Haystacks Calhoun.
It's very, very true. And boy, Strong Kobayashi was very upset that this match was over. he was very angry after this match.
Yes.
And we move to the Spectrum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for what will be the main event of this tape. A 10-man tag.
With very unique rules. This is a 10-man tag. It is not a 1-fall match.
No.
It is not a best 2 out of 3 falls match.
This
is a best 3 out of 5 falls match, and they tell us that it has a 2-hour time limit, a 120-minute time limit. I assume
I checked the runtime on.
well,
I'm like, how much time is left in this tape? How long have I been watching this?
the tape itself is only 90 minutes. So even if they put this as the opener and you started the tape, you would have known it didn't go to a time limit draw. Like they should have put like a dummy second tape in the pack so that you didn't get spoiled, that you didn't get a 2-hour draw here. And the competitors in this most unique, they say first ever 10-man tag are
For me, it's a first ever best of 5 in one match. That's usually like a series. We're gonna get a best of 5 here in one match. No, that's
like the was it the Marquis of Queensberry best of 5, Ric Flair, Lord Steven Regal from Worldwide back in the 90s. It's like that, but all in one night. And boy, the luminaries in this match, it is Mr. Fuji, Ray Stevens, Don Muraco, Buddy Rose, and superstar Billy Graham, looking not like superstar Billy Graham physically.
Full karate guy, superstar Billy Graham at this point.
And not anywhere near as big as you would have remembered him being. They take on Rocky Johnson, again, the father of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Salvatore Belomo, who I remember Sal Belomo from the early, again, Eastern Championship Wrestling days of ECW, seeing pictures of him and seeing his name in results in PWI. Here he was here in, I'm assuming, 83, 84, or 85, teaming with, along with Rocky Johnson, Pedro Morales, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and Andre the Giant. So just think about this. This is a match that is best 3 out of 5 falls with a 2-hour time limit. There is the potential that Andre the Giant is going to be in a 2-hour match. But that's not all. We have more rules here. I feel like we needed a ring announcer telling us the rules are simple and then getting a PowerPoint presentation. But we're told that the 2 men involved in the pinfall sequence to end a fall must begin the next fall as the legal men.
So the match starts with Rocky Johnson in there with Mr. Fuji, and he's doing all kinds of athletic stuff, handstands, leaping to his feet. Rocky Johnson is awesome. I have not watched enough Rocky Johnson. I need some more randomizer. I need some more Rocky Johnson. This was fantastic. He runs wild early on everybody, and then a lot of this match gets edited out. And so all of a sudden, Andre's in. He boots Muraco over the tops of the floor. Now, there's actual commentary for this match, but Monsoon overdubbed new commentary.
It's very disorienting because not only is there actual commentary, live commentary happening, not only is the overdubbed commentary Guerrilla Monsoon, but the commentary that you hear in the background is also Guerrilla Monsoon. It is disorienting, particularly if you're listening on headphones as you're watching, as I was
also. Yeah.
You're hearing Guerrilla Monsoon call the match, but then when he stops talking, you're hearing Guerrilla Monsoon call the match.
I'm not sure why we couldn't just hear the other commentary. It was so weird.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of, and I still think it's dumb and they shouldn't have done it, but because they clipped it up so much that they didn't want to have like so many times where they like you'd be in the middle of him talking and they'd go to something else. But yeah, it was like if they couldn't find, if they didn't have in, here in 1985, the ability to just use the master tape without the previously existing commentary, they should have just gone with the existing commentary because it was very disorienting.
Yeah, Andre ends up sending Muraco into the ropes, and Andre does a drop down.
This?
He does a drop down, and then Muraco comes running in, and he just like, as Andre gets back up, his ass is just sticking out there, and Muraco just runs into him like a just runs into a brick wall. It was
this was cartoon stuff. Yeah, this was like, like you said, Andre dropped down, and then Muraco just runs into his ass for some reason. Like he knew it was there, but kept running. He could. It just. I mean, Andre's big, but there was still. I mean, WWF rings are pretty wide. He couldn't find a route around, so he just ran into it, and it hurt so much that it sent him directly to the floor.
Muraco and Salvador are in. Muraco gives him an airplane spin, but gets too dizzy. He's doing it. He falls down. Salvador with a near fall. Then Ray Stevens is in, and he punches the crap out of Belomo.
Yes, Ray Stevens was awesome here.
Awesome.
And it was fun to see because the only time we've seen him on this podcast is a very old Ray Stevens that really couldn't do much in that whatever it was 6 or 8 man tag. I loved the intensity here. Quick commentary note: a few things here in this match. For some reason, Guerrilla Monsoon says that Jimmy Snuka is Samoan, which is not true. And then he also keeps calling the headbutt the Cocoa Butt.
He does, yes.
Which he does not in any of the other matches.
So Snuka's in, and he beats up Stevens, then Muraco. Awesome lightning quick punches by Rocky Johnson on Don Muraco. I mean, for the very early 80s here, this was a lot of fast-paced action in this match. I was completely shocked.
When I see Rocky Johnson here, all I can think is, like, if I am running a company, Rocky Johnson's my guy.
100%. What a star.
He's the guy that I'm booking everything around. He looks great. He can move. He has everything. He comes off like a total star, and
100%.
His quickness, everything just stands out so much here. Like you said, in this surprisingly quick match in general for 1983, but it really, really stands out.
Andre with a headbutt, and Muraco hangs himself getting his head stuck between the top and middle ropes.
Yes, that was, it was he got himself in the Mick Foley loses an ear position. Thankfully, both ears stayed on said head.
We're told that the referee's name is Dick Worley, and that's my new favorite name ever.
Scrappy McGowan was my favorite referee name up until this point. But yeah, Dick Worley
Worley's my new favorite referee. The first fall ends when Belomo and Fuji are in there. Fuji catches him with a sloppy-looking belly-to-belly suplex and gets the 3 count. Now, the alternate commentary track that we can hear faintly in the background, Monsoon says, "A beautiful flying momentum suplex," and that's exactly what it was.
This was the suplex version of the Tony Schiavone flying body attack as far as what happened. That said, for 1983 and for Fuji being Fuji, it was really cool. And when they showed the different angle of it on the replay, from that angle where it was kind of obscured a little bit, it actually looked really good. So I've seen worse. I've definitely seen worse.
So Fuji and Belomo have to start the next fall per the rules. So Fuji's holding him like fall away slam style, and Snuka comes off the top, drop kicking Belomo's back. He's on top of Fuji, gets the quick 3 count, and we're even at 2 falls apiece.
And remember, again, the men who finish the fall have to start the next fall.
Yes, so with all these awesome guys in the match, the 2 crappiest guys have been involved in the first 2 falls.
Yes.
So Buddy Rose is in with Snuka. We
skip ahead so we don't see the 2 men that finish the fall start off the next fall.
No, Rose is in with Snuka. Rose sends him in. He puts his head down for a backdrop, but Snuka up and over with a leapfrog. Then he drops down, rolls him up from behind into a sunset flip pinning position, and gets the 3 count. This was super cool and very creative. Andre's team at this point is now up 2 falls to 1.
Which does not mean they've won the match, by the way. The tape isn't over. We still have more because, again,
best of 5.
This is a best of 5 match. I have not heard the time call, so I don't know if we're getting close to that 2-hour time limit, but I assume not.
There's no way we are. Andre's in the bad guy corner, and he's taking a beating. He's trying to fight out. Andre catches Muraco on top and slams him off the top rope.
When it looked like Muraco was going for that same diving knee drop to the back of the head where you hold on to the guy, like he was going for the regular version of that he hit the reverse version of earlier on in this tape.
Andre then rams Rose's head into Snuka's head. That was a cool spot.
A double noggin knocker, but because it's Snuka and he has a hard head, it's an offensive weapon.
Andre with a big boot. Then drops down ass first onto the chest of Buddy Rose and gets
big
the
Josh
3
Northern
count.
exposure style.
3 falls to 1. Team Andre wins. We never got to see karate superstar Billy Graham in this match at all. and then Gary Michael Capetta,
Yes!
the ring announcer,
I
comes
wrote
in.
that down. I was going to ask because I wrote it down, but I purposely didn't research it because I wanted us to have this moment together. I was going to ask you, was that Gary Michael Capetta? Apparently it was.
I didn't
Was he the
research
ring
it either,
announcer
but
for
I heard
Philadelphia?
him. Yeah,
He was. It absolutely was. There's no way it wasn't.
was. Yeah, and so yeah, he's in the ring there, and you hear him thanking everyone for coming, and this
Telling
was
them tickets are on sale
show.
for the next show in March, whatever.
And then all of a sudden, the credits roll on the tape. We never saw our host Jesse Ventura again. That was weird. It just credits roll and the tape is over. So that was pretty fun. That's a bunch of stuff I would have never watched. And,
For sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a good time. We had a fun time.
Yeah, it was a perfectly fine, fun way to spend 90 minutes. Like you said, stuff I would have never watched otherwise. In a lot of ways, the epitome of what this podcast is about. And I think why you and I were excited to do this podcast just selfishly for ourselves, as much as, to bring it to the listeners. Just the concept of this podcast overall, that we would watch stuff we otherwise would never have decided to pick out and watch. This definitely fits that bill. I did think it was interesting in the credits, a couple of things. Well, first off, it ended with saying special thanks to Vince McMahon. But then also it was interesting that Craig Leathers was listed as an executive producer. Craig Leathers would go on to have a longtime executive and production role with WCW.
Ah. I did not stick around for the credits, so I did not pick up that.
I'm dedicated, man. There might have been another Fashion Corner moment. You never know.
And I don't think we need to do a best match, worst match here. That's pretty straightforward.
Best match was the Haystacks match.
Yes.
Worst match was Snuka Muraco. We're in agreement.
Some of these worst matches were too clipped to do them justice. But
clearly, Snuka Muraco, without a doubt.
If you haven't seen it, go out of your way to see Snuka and Muraco.
It's
a
not
legendary
clipped.
match.
It's the only thing on this tape, I believe, that was
Correct.
not clipped at all. So yeah, if you can find this show, if you can dig up a VHS, or if you can find it in the wonky interface of the WWE Network, absolutely seek it out. And if nothing else, like you said, Jeremy, watch this cage match, because the final moment of it is one of the more legendary, iconic moments in modern wrestling history. But the entire match is awesome, and it's what a cage match should be, as far as blood and hatred, and in some ways, there's a title on the line, but as we said, with the way Snuka reacted at the end, getting revenge on your hated rival was more important than winning or keeping a championship.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. You heard us mention a lot of our past shows, and so go out, even if you haven't seen the show, go and dig into those archives and make sure you listen to those shows, subscribe so you don't miss any of the new ones, and tell your wrestling fan friends about us. Tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about us. Show them how to subscribe to the podcast. We're on every podcatcher of choice. Make sure that's the way you can support the show. And again, interact with us via social media. All of those links and everything else we mentioned is available, of course, at wrestlingatrandom.com.
And also make sure to tell wrestling fans who who used to be your friends to watch it, because
right.
They may hate you, but they still like wrestling, so they'll love this podcast.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. This was as random as it gets. It was everything this podcast is supposed to be, so look forward to whatever the next thing the randomizer throws our way.
I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next